First thing I'd like to do is introduce President Jane Karras.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to thank you for joining us at FECC and welcome you and everybody here and thank you for bringing the beautiful sunny weather, which we see so infrequently here in the Flathead in the spring. And I want to also let you know that many of you have commented on our buildings and our campus, and I have to say it may take a village to raise a child, but it takes a community to build a college, and we have a very supportive community here in the Flathead who has built a phenomenal college without any state dollars to build these buildings and purchase this land, and they've continued to support us. And I want to recognize them, but I also need to recognize especially our custodial and maintenance crew who keep these buildings looking as phenomenally spotless and clean and well kept as they do, along with our faculty and staff. We had a record graduation Friday night. Our commencement had 388 students receiving 423 degrees and certificates. That's a 23% increase over last year. 11 of those students are transferring into engineering. 13 were in our scholars program that graduated and are going on to honors colleges at U of M and MSU and other colleges around the country. 25% of those graduates were funded through TAA, the Trade Adjustment Act and Workforce Investment Act funds, just showing you how many of those dislocated workers have been able to go on to college and graduate, and many of them have gone on to get jobs. Unfortunately, not many here in Flathead Valley, but many in eastern Montana and western North Dakota, because that's where many of those career and technical jobs are right now. And I could tell you many, many things about our college, but I know we don't have a lot of time. But I did put one of our flyers that went out to all of our, every male patron here in the Valley that talks about our early registration, but also highlights some of the things our students and faculty have done. And you can read about our student Andrew Crawford, who was a professional snowboarder and who came back to college here and got into engineering. He applied for, or competed in a NASA competition, was awarded first place, and went to NASA for a week in Houston, led an international team of students to build a rover, a Mars rover, and won first place there. And now he'll be spending the summer in an internship at NASA in Pasadena and will be going on to MSU for engineering. Ben Woody, our editor of our school newspaper, received a scholarship from Georgetown University. Our chemistry students are on their way now to the American Association of Mass Spectrometry conference, national conference, where they'll be presenting about their research on protein folding, some very innovative research. They presented it to our foundation board, and I could tell by the glazed eyes that it was a very high-level presentation. Our faculty have done some amazing things. Lowell Yeager received the Montana Humanities Award this year. Paul Martino is taking our students. He's doing patentable research. Those are just some of the faculty that we have. And I'd like to introduce to you in just 1 minute one of our students who stayed after graduation. I'll tell you something about it in a minute. Just a couple of quick housekeeping issues. The restrooms, if you haven't found them, are out these doors to your left and then on your immediate right. And we are going to move where lunch is being served to make it more comfortable and for everybody. So it will be outside of this building across the parking lot to the building on your right, which is our administration building. We have a cafeteria in there for all of the meeting attendees, and then the regents and students will be meeting in our boardroom in that same building for lunch. So lunch will not be in this building, but it will be, everybody gets a chance to get a little bit of fresh air and sunshine. And then I would like to introduce Laura Mcdonald, who's one of our nursing students. She just was pinned last Friday, one of 17 nursing students, one of the largest classes we've had. And I'm happy to introduce Laura because not only is she a student from the Flathead Valley, but she's one of our nursing students. She's taking time away from her NCLEX prep class right now to talk with you. But we know she's going to be one of those students who maintains our 100% pass rate on the NCLEX exam. So it's my pleasure to introduce Laura McDonald.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm proud to be addressing you as a recent graduate of this institution. I wanted to say how much I've appreciated the opportunity to go to school here in my hometown. As a typical non-traditional student, if there is such a thing, I have lots of ties in this community. I have a daughter who's in school here, my husband's career is here, and my grandmother is in assisted living. So leaving even for a short amount of time to attend school elsewhere would have been a big hardship for us. So not only did I get to go to school here, but I got to attend a fabulous program. In addition to the 100% success rate of graduates here passing the NCLEX, I found that they really got us out in the community and working in a variety of environments. During my time here, I had the opportunity to take care of a 97-year-old woman during the last 2 days of her life, and I got to help a physician bring a child into the world, and all kinds of things in between. I feel very prepared and ready to go out and be a part of our healthcare community here in the Flathead, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go on in school and get my RN, hopefully here in the Flathead as well. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy your beautiful day here.
Thank you, and congratulations. All right, if we could, we didn't this morning approve the minutes, so if we could. Regent McLean has moved that we approve the minutes as posted in our agenda. Is there any comments or corrections on those minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. I know we do have a few introductions. President Cruzado.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm delighted to introduce 3 individuals who will be working in different capacities at Montana State University. First of all, I would like to introduce Mr. Terry Least, who has been appointed as Interim Vice President for Admin and Finance. Terry brings with him 20 years of experience from the corporate world with UPS International. In addition to that, he has served in the student success area at Montana State University, and his last appointment was as the business officer for the vice president for academic affairs and provost. So welcome, Terry. We're delighted to have you here. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Tom Culcaney. Mr. Culcaney joins us also after extensive experience in public relations, public affairs, and broadcast journalism. His last appointment was with AAA as Managing Director of Public Relations and the spokesperson for that firm. We are very excited to have someone of Tom's experience and vision joining us as Executive Director of University Communications at Montana State. And last but not least, someone that doesn't need an introduction, and I'm delighted to reintroduce someone who has served this institution so well, this institution, and I should say this state, in the person of Joe Callahan. As you know very well, a long-standing servant of MSU Northern, an extraordinary job as a provost, and today I'm delighted to introduce him as interim chancellor of MSU Northern. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, President Cruzado. Any other announcements we need to make or introductions? Dean Schaefer.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner Stearns. I do want to introduce a new addition to our campus. Miss Wendy Dove is joining the campus as our Executive Director of Institutional Research and Planning. She comes to us from the University of Puget Sound, where she spent her time as an institutional researcher and a faculty member, and also has experience teaching at the community college in mathematics. So we're excited to have her. She's already doing great things for our campus.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Any other introductions? All right. Then I guess I would just like to briefly open the meeting by saying congratulations. Congratulations to all that participate in the Montana University system. Over the last couple of weeks as a system, we've graduated over 8,000 students. I think it's a remarkable accomplishment for our state, for the students, and for those who participate. No matter how complicated we all try to make it, in the end, I think what we're trying to do is graduate students. And as Denise has often said, graduation matters. I think we just came from a witchy conference. Education is wonderful, but in the end, graduation does matter, whether it's from K through 12 or earning a certificate or an AA degree or a bachelor's degree, or even like our own Joe Schaefer, who I got to watch be hooded at the U of M ceremony last weekend. it is what we're trying to accomplish, and I think when we turn out 8,000 students, we're making a difference to their lives and to the state, and so I congratulate everyone who's participated in that. With that, I would simply like us to move on, and we will start with the Commissioner. Commissioner Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, there are several bullets to the Commissioner's report, and included in that will be some comments from Superintendent of Public Instruction, Denise. When we made the agenda, we didn't know she would be able to be here, so consider yourself right along in there, Denise, and we're so glad you're able to be here. Members of the board, and actually all colleagues in the university system, as I have just visited with 7 of you in my annual evaluation, I am pleased to announce that Hal and I have finally agreed on a schedule for my retirement, and that the board concurs with that schedule. Hal was the hard part. It is my intention, with your good support, to retire in the spring of 2012 from this wonderful position as Montana's Commissioner of Higher Education. The exact, precise time may flex a bit depending on your guidance and the pleasure of the board, and upon the progress of the search for my successor. I have had an opportunity to brief my staff back in Helena via notes that if they're streaming online, hello to all of you at OCHI. Working with you is more wonderful than you can possibly know. I also had a chance to visit with the governor a few minutes ago. He told me he would not let Hal and me go when we finish, that he thinks we still have things to do in education, and I guess we appreciate that and would always be willing to serve. I pledge that during my final year as your commissioner, that I will work as hard as I always have to serve this truly dedicated Board of Regents, to serve as a privileged colleague with Presidents Cruzado and Engstrom and all campus leaders in the system, and to work with so many terrific students, staff, faculty, and educational partners, and especially with our outstanding staff in the Office of the Commissioner. For the coming year, members of the board, as we just touched on in the evaluation and challenges discussion, I will continue to work toward the board's strategic directions, many of which, toward which we've made great progress, but there's always much more to do. And I would like to mention just a few that are high on our agenda and the board's agenda. That is, 1, more college participation and success in all our units, especially in the 2-year colleges, pursuing the terrific goals of the Lumina Grant. Number 2, graduation matters, higher graduation rates. Number 3, collaboration with K-12 partners for lower remediation and for more acceleration through dual enrollment and innovative programs in all of our colleges and universities to help our students graduate with high quality degrees, but in a timely fashion that minimizes the levels of debt and financial liability they have. 4, to complete and continue to update and enrich the college course numbering and transferability project for a seamless and easy transfer among all of our units, and working with WICHE with other states on transferability and distance learning. 5, to advocate as effectively, I hope, as ever, and always more so, for all parts of our system, including for retention and recruitment among our outstanding faculty and staff. And finally, to work harder for strategic financial aid so that college really is an open door to anyone willing to work hard, regardless of personal or family income or background. By the spring of 2012, when I am completing 9 years as your commissioner, I will have worked, I'm roughly calculating, with 21 regents, 4 presidents, 8 chancellors, 10 College of Technology deans, and 5 community college presidents. I've enjoyed and Hal. One husband. A challenging one, but one for 42 years. I have enjoyed great working relationships with many in state government. As I look out and look at Pam Joler and others, they're just all through state government who've been such great colleagues. Those colleagues include 2 governors, 2 superintendents of public instruction, hundreds of legislators, and others in state government who've helped me out time and time again. And I have depended for advice and assistance from hundreds of citizen leaders across the state, from the shared leadership task forces that worked on distance learning and access and financial aid, to the group, the citizens group that helped with the important passage of the 6 mil levy, and to the new group recently formed, the Friends of Montana Higher Education. Those citizens I will continue to work with after my retirement to the best of my ability and to the extent that they would like me to do so. In my retirement, I intend to have time to breathe and read and to do more things with Hal, like golfing and hiking and biking and maybe dancing. Hal is a little nervous that I'll become a tiger grandma because of ideas like this one. On Thursdays of each week, I would like to give my grandson, Ren Stearns, a ride to his piano lessons and to stay to take a lesson myself after a break of 50 years from my last piano lessons. Stuff like that. I also hope to stay involved with public higher education policy, serving state and national organizations in the big national goal to raise the numbers of Americans who have completed a degree or a high-quality workforce credential. I'd like to travel a bit with Superintendent Denise Juneau in her important work and in her campaign for re-election to signal to Montanans the extent to which we all work together and that there's almost nothing we can't do to elevate Montana's educational levels when we work together. It has been a privilege, and I've enjoyed almost every minute of it. You notice the almost, but really almost every minute of it. I look forward to this final year with a sense of both accomplishment, but also of much work to be done. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I am ready to get back to work for this, my final year in your service, because we do have a challenging meeting ahead of us.
Thank you. Well, we extend congratulations. I know the board has expressed that already, but there will be many more to follow. It will be another change, and we will embrace that as well. But we certainly, as a board, have truly enjoyed working with you. I certainly have enjoyed working with you. It will be a much missed departure, but a much earned one. So congratulations, and we will get back to work.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will call upon Mr. Trevor to give us the campus enrollment report as part of our Commissioner's Office report to you.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Commissioner, that's a change of topics, and I guess I can't stand up here without first saying something publicly about my boss, and the appreciation I have for Commissioner Stearns is pretty much indescribable. Put it this way, I wouldn't live in Montana and I wouldn't raise my kids here unless Sheila Stearns wouldn't have hired me, so clearly I can't hardly talk about it, but so Summer, cue the presentation. Well, I'll start it out while Summer's figuring out the technology. It's no news. Enrollment in the university system continues to grow. We've heard this and we trumpeted this throughout the legislative session. Literally, if we had the chart up here, you'd see the magnitude at which enrollment has grown. And we envision 13 years of enrollment chart growth. This is the first time I've ever done this. And it goes flat for 10 years. Flat for 10 years. And then in 2008, we start to increase. And boy, do we ever increase. In the last 3 years, we've grown more than we had in those 10 previous years. And I'd know the exact amount if I had that chart up there. This was not how it was planned.
Tyler, do you want to wait and we'll do the campuses?
That might be a good idea.
Presentation.
It's really
Is that okay with you,
that's
President
fine by me.
Engstrom? Okay, thanks. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to make a few highlights of what is going on in the affiliated campuses of the University of Montana. There are 4 things that I want to call to your attention, and we'll do that fairly quickly, but I'll have a couple of guests help me out here. So first, at your stations, you each should have received a copy of the University of Montana's new strategic plan, 2020, Building a University for the Global Century. And I just want to call that out to you and have you browse through that at your leisure. We're very proud of the work that went into this document, extensive work by many, many people, many of whom are here today, but it will provide the direction for the Missoula campus for the next many years, we hope. And so we're very proud to present that to you. Secondly, I want to make an announcement on behalf of Ray Ford, our Chief Information Officer, who he, in fact, is also retiring at the end of this year, but he's not here today. But some very exciting developments that involve many of the campuses across the state of Montana. The National Science Foundation, through the EPSCoR program, this is a program that has been in the state of Montana now for quite a few years. We associate it really with building research infrastructure. But recently they have made a significant grant in excess of $1 million to the state to help us build our networking infrastructure, not only at the research campuses, but across the state. And so Ray Ford, working in collaboration with Gwen Jacobs from Montana State University, submitted this grant, and it was funded. And it has allowed several very important things to happen. Flathead Valley Community College will now be connected to the high bandwidth Northern Tier network with a 100 megabit link, which is a huge pipeline to Flathead Valley Community College. And so that is funded with a 6-year contract, fully funded by this grant. Salish Kootenai College, the same way. It has a 6-year contract, fully funded by the grant for 100 megabit linkage to it. Billings they have put together a new connect point in Billings, and that then is serving as the connection point for both Miles City and Dawson Community College. And they will have 50 or 100 megabit links to them as well. And so then going down the road, that will provide the baseline to work with some of the other tribal colleges in the state as well. So this is a project externally funded through the National Science Foundation that has brought major connectivity now to many of the institutions around the state that aren't on the main backbone that basically runs across the interstate. So we're very happy about that collaborative project that has gone on across Montana. And now I would like to ask Dean Peggy Coor of our School of Journalism to come up if she would and just make a few comments about a major program change that you approved about 2 years ago now, and I wanted to have her give you an update of how this program is working, because it really gets to this issue of program review and our constant thinking about how to move programs in a direction that serves students better. So Peggy, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner Stearns, when Tom Brokaw was in Missoula last weekend for commencement ceremonies, I was able to ask him this question: what do journalism students need to learn today? His reply: they need to learn to write well, regardless of how the news media may change. And when we get to our graduate students in the master's program in journalism, we need to get more specific. So as President Engstrom said, 2 years ago, you, the Board of Regents, approved our new master's degree in environmental science and natural resource journalism. It's highly focused, highly interdisciplinary, and it totally replaced the general master's degree that we had before. Why change? Evaluators on campus and external evaluators had told us we needed a program that was more distinctive from the undergraduate program that we offer. And so we asked ourselves, how can we build a program of excellence given the faculty's professional experience, given expertise of researchers across the UM campus, given the fact the news industry is changing dramatically, and given our location in the beautiful state of Montana. Here are the results so far. This is the first year of a 2-year program. So we had 6 students who were admitted this first year. Our goal was somewhere between 5 and 10. We have 6. This spring, in a new class called Story Lab, they were paired with scientists across the UM campus, and they are working on developing stories in areas that range from wildlife biology to soil science, paleontology, watershed hydrology. The program is growing. We have 10 students who have accepted our offer and are coming in the fall. Of those 10, 8 are from out of state. Half of them have some kind of English, journalism, or writing in their background. Almost half come directly from science backgrounds, and 1 is in marketing and technology. The program's goal basically is to have scientists come and learn how to communicate better with the general audience, and have people interested in journalism come and learn how complex science and research can be, and how to tell stories and explain them in a more complete and contextual manner. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Neil Moisey for a few fill-in-the-blank remarks.
Thank you. Chair, Board, Commissioner, and President Engstrom, thanks for the opportunity to talk about this. At the last Regents meeting, Regent Barrett and some of the faculty were really talking about how do we establish the value of programs as we go through a program review process. And this is a good example of, at least on our campus, how the faculty, the administration, and the students really came together and said, we need to reconfigure an existing program to be more proactive, to adapt to changes going on within the field. And it was a difficult process to run this through the faculty approval process, mainly because what we were asking is the faculty to kind of let go of something historically that had always been there, a very broad degree program. And it was a good process to go through because we really heard from students, we heard from the faculty in the program about why it was important for this program to change in the way it did. And we had a total change in the vote and the opinion of the faculty on various curricular committees through this process. And so I think as we start talking about the value, establishing the value of programs through a review process, that this is a good example of a program that really did adapt to what the market was dictating, what students were looking for. And it was, from the faculty perspective, it really worked well. And I'd love to see this kind of process happen and be more institutionalized. And we do have this process on our campus, and you know, it'd be nice every year to be able to have similar sorts of stories to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy and Neil. Let me go on to the next point, and there may be a question after that. The final thing that I would like to highlight is going to be discussed by Dean Daniel Bingham, and we held about 6 weeks ago the first University of Montana all-campus day-long discussion on the topic of student success. And so I wanted Daniel to come up and just make a few comments about that.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Stearns, as President Ingram said, we did get together as a campus affiliation, and with a great idea that the President had. And at this time, I'd kind of like to ask the board if they can limit President Engstrom to at least 12 good ideas a week, and that would help us to catch up. We did get together, and it was an exciting day. At first, I thought when President Engstrom said, let's have this in April, and let's do it April 1st, I thought, well, that's a good joke, and let's have it at your campus. And I said, that's an even better joke than the first one. But we did do that. We did pull everybody together. We had 25 to 30 individuals come to our campus, and we spent the afternoon, the morning and afternoon together, and it was quite exciting. We do get together at the Board of Regents, and we all know each other from the administration level, but this was designed to pull together individuals deeper down in the organizations, have them come together, talk about similarities and differences, and see where we can meet some of our goals and talk about best practices. So the day started off with a presentation by Helena to the group that talked about our similarities and differences from a 2-year perspective, and our role within the affiliation and our role within the greater Montana higher education system. And so we had our executive staff get up and do some presentations, and I think what happened from that presentation was there was a lot of, oh, I didn't know, I didn't understand, or I didn't see, and that's interesting, why you do it that way. After that, during our lunch time, we had Patrick Barkey, who visited with us about the economic impact that the affiliation has within the state of Montana, which I thought was quite enlightening. He talked about individual campuses. He talked about Helena and how we impact our region and within the state, and of course the impact across the state. And then the remaining afternoon, the other 3 campuses talked about best practices in achieving student success and what they do on their campuses to reach that goal. And again, there was a lot of great information that was presented. I think each campus went back to their individual campuses and took that information and starting to implement some of the things that we've learned. I think what really happened more than anything else, it provided us an opportunity to see our similarities and our differences, and for our people, beyond what normally happens at a Board of Regents meeting or at a higher level, have an opportunity to come together, meet each other, because they spend a lot of time talking, email, on the phone, but sometimes face-to-face, and then discussing those practices that would help all of us become better and become more of a unified system within the system. So that was our day, and I'm sure that we will be doing more of that in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. In fact, we will have each semester one of the campuses host the rest of the campuses for a discussion day on a topic of the host campus choice. So thanks for the opportunity to highlight a few of those things on behalf of
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if you remember, we had similar conversations with the MSU campuses at the last meeting, and we'll work these out so that all the campuses get a chance to focus on particular highlights that they're doing to advance the goals of your strategic plan. How are we doing on the enrollment report? Do you think we're good, Tyler? Because you were doing pretty great with the hand signals, but...
It's going to get better, but...
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just quickly here, these are the sound bites that I had intended to kind of relay to you, and that is we now have over 40,000 FTE. It wasn't long ago, I think in 2006, I stood up here and said we have over 40,000 head count. So that's pretty significant, and to demonstrate that, since 2008, we've increased by 5,400 FTE. In the previous 10 years, so going back between 1998 and 2008, we grew by 2,000 FTE. That, there's no point in time in the history of the Montana University system that we've ever seen this level of growth, and it continues. So take a look at the next slide, which is a comparison of this year over last year. We have a 5.3% overall FTE growth over last year. Now remember, backing up a year ago, we had a 6.5% increase. So we've gone 2 years in a row with a 5% growth. And the previous year to that was about a 3% growth. I stood up here and gave a presentation one time I created with Bill Muse. He'll appreciate me pointing this out, where we predicted that actually the university system enrollment was not going to take off like this as a result of the decline in the number of high school graduates. It's a natural decline just based upon our population. But that pool of students, and it still has not grown. It's slowly going down. I think by 2017, if you look at the projections, enrollment of high school graduates begins to take off again. But what we've seen here is just an overall growth in the system coming from a lot of different angles, some of it which I'll discuss this afternoon in a presentation on affordability and financial aid, just to pique your interest. But if we take a look at the categories of what we've grown just at least over the last year, it's resident undergraduates, as always, where the big numbers are. We've increased by over 1,000 resident undergraduate students from last year to this year. That's FTE. And if you take a look at the overall percent growth, WUI takes that with the small numbers and a all right increase. So if we take a look at the next slide, which is a 10-year comparison, it's a little more interesting here. Again, we see that the numeric growth is in resident undergraduate students. Over a 10-year period of time, 5,000 more resident undergraduate students in the Montana University system. I've said this before, but that's like the equivalent of a MSU Billings, a new campus being brought up in the university system. And you can see the various other categories of growth across the system. WUI again with the largest percent increase. Moving on to the next slide. Here we just take a look at undergraduate FTE to get down to where has, in terms of by campus type, where has the growth been? So over a 1-year increase, the largest numeric growth at 4-year and the highest percent growth at the COT, as you might expect. And over 10 years, it's been all COT. That's 3,000 new FTE just at the COTs for about 100% increase. One more slide, Summer. And not to leave out graduate FTE, I have it here by campus. 4.2% growth over last year, 24% growth over time, so it's outpaced the overall percent growth of enrollment. So we're doing well here, and you can see the various trends by campus. And finally, the last slide isn't intended for any presentation, but rather if throughout the day, or if you have an interest of your own to look at individual campus trend in FTE, you can take a look at this. And if you dare to click on the link, you'll get all of the detail. You don't need to do that, Summer. But you start to see, the complexity of enrollment grows exponentially given the number of campuses and then by the different types of students, and you can concoct a lot of different arrays to look at. And if you ever have any questions related to any of this or follow-up questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'd be glad to follow up in person with you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, are there any questions for Tyler in regard to this?
Hamilton.
Thank you, Chairman Christian. Mr. Trevor, is the growth in the WUI students within the WUI guidelines as far as, and the rules, I guess, of the board as far as how many WUIs we can admit versus how many go out of state on WUI?
Mr. Chair, Regent Hamilton, I don't think I can answer that question. I don't know. I honestly didn't know there was a defined set of rules. I know some states have more exports than imports and is weighted up and down that way. I believe our imports are very close to our exports in terms of WUI last time I looked at it.
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hamilton, there were guidelines, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, when it appeared that we were importing way more than we were exporting. It seemed out of whack. We are still not exactly in sync, but we made an effort on campuses, and the different campuses approached it different ways. We allowed some slack, particularly, for example, in Billings, close to Wyoming, for Western, close to Idaho, in regard to some of that slack. But it is a subject worth looking at. Again, we probably have not looked at it as a board for a while, so we'll make a short report for the board on that. WUI being the Western Undergraduate Exchange, I'm not sure everyone always has those acronyms totally down, but it's a great benefit to Montana in many ways, but it is one, it's timely to look at it again, so good question.
Other questions? Commissioner Stearns?
Members of the board, attached to the Commissioner's report is the proposed meeting schedule for the next 3 years, and we always add a year out. We already know it's draft. Everyone, please remember that. We will make some corrections. We've already realized that, although we tried not to do it, that I think in this draft, didn't we overlap a bit with the Northwest Commission on Colleges? And we are working with them on the January dates because we always have one or more of our presidents and chancellors or community college presidents who serve on the Northwest Commission, and we created a conflict for them. So that'll be a slight change. So the meetings next year will be the one this summer. The planning meeting for the board is August 2nd, and then we'll be in Butte and in Bozeman, and in January, I think back in Helena. I can't remember. It's probably right in front of me here if I just look. Oh, excuse me, we are in Billings in September. Remember, we alternate. And then I think at this time in March, we're in Dillon. And then I think at the spring next time, we'll be driving out to Miles and Glendive for let's hope we have a beautiful green year to travel along the Yellowstone Valley like it would be this year. So take a look at that, everyone. If you see issues, one of the things I want to call your attention to is after 2 out of 3 years of my years as commissioner being asked if we could adjust the September meeting to Wednesday, Thursday, rather than Thursday, Friday, because of various campuses having homecomings and needing their presidents to be on campuses on Fridays to greet alumni and take part in their campus activities. We've just decided to flat move those. The September meeting will be Wednesday, Thursday. So that just kind of hold that thought so that we don't have to be moving it. So if there are suggestions, we don't have to talk about them now, but please get them to me or to my staff or real noticeable conflicts. Okay?
Okay.
Going on to the next thing, I would like to call attention to the MUS Writing Assessment, and I don't know if Deputy Commissioner Dr. Moore would like to just say a word of introduction and have Dr. Kleinert give us a short report because the writing assessment is in transition.
Thank you, Commissioner Stearns, members of the board. When I first came to the Montana University system in September of 2008, the person who literally met me before I could get to my office was Dr. Jan Kleinert. Not only did she loan me a chair because my office was without a chair, but she also handed me a copy of the Montana University System Writing Assessment Report. She has remained passionate about that and convinced me and made me a believer in the value of that testing process, particularly as it worked on professional development for teachers in our K-12 system. We had to make a decision to do some alignment of resources in our office, and one of the things that happened with that is the Montana University Writing Assessment will not be run out of the Commissioner's office henceforward, and Dr. Kleinert will be moving on to other things. Now, I'm going to let her talk about how we're planning where the Montana University System Writing Assessment will go. But before I handed it off to her, I just want to say that this was an 11-year project with incredibly good data. It has received national attention. It is respected as a process that not only tests what it's supposed to test, but also works very closely with our schools and our teachers to try to help them improve writing in the state of Montana. And I am very grateful for Jan's greeting me and welcoming me and being passionate about this project. And I'm going to let her give our last official Montana University System Writing Assessment report. Jan.
Summer has a report. All right, thank you. Yes, I'm going to pass around. I found this in a store right here. It's great. It says, change happens. We call it the MUS. Commissioner Stearns, Mr. Chairman, Regents, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be back in Kalispell. A long, long time ago when I first moved to Kalispell, I left a wonderful job at Cherry Creek High School just outside of Denver and was without a job and started taking classes at FECC, which was downtown in real estate, and I started selling real estate here when nobody wanted to live here, basically. In any case, and then I was an adjunct at FECC teaching composition in one of those old rickety buildings downtown. So it's a pleasure to be back. Okay, I'm going to go over some longitudinal data on the writing assessment. Began in 2001. Very interesting fact is that the students who tested this year in 2011 were first graders in 2001. Next slide, Summer. The Montana Board of Regents was really pretty visionary. In 1995, I was at the Office of Public Instruction, and the Board of Regents passed an item called Proficiency Admission Requirements and Development Education in the MUS. And what they wanted to do was make sure that students had a reasonable chance of success in post-secondary education by adopting some kind of uniform assessment tools. And I began working with who was then Deputy Commissioner Stuart Knapp in 1998, convening groups of high school and college folks to talk about the transition of students from writing to high school writing to composition. And in July 2000, the board moved to begin implementing a proficiency standard. In October of 2000, I was hired from OPI to OG. And in 2004, the board adopted the writing proficiency, the MUS Writing Assessment, which we call MUSWA, as one measure. Next slide. Some of the changes happened since '01. You can see we've really increased the number of students we test, really increased double the number of high schools really that participate voluntarily. We have more than 3 times the number of scores come to our now 8 regional sites rather than just 3. Our average has increased, the number of students who get 6s. Yesterday at the TRIO conference, I passed out some samples of those 6s, and Commissioner Stearns has been reading some of those 6s, and they are really pretty astonishing that we have so many students in Montana that in a 40-minute timed write can produce such pieces of writing. And a lot more students scoring college ready. When we first started working with ACT, every single one of our tests was handwritten. This year, only 2% were handwritten. The vast majority are word processed and submitted online. Next slide. Okay, this is Holden Peprock. His mother has been scoring the writing assessments since it began in 2001. She's one of our trainers, Holly, from Shelby High School. And I'm afraid Holden has probably been hearing about MUSWA ever since he was in the 1st grade. And this year he earned a 6. And when he got that score of a 6, Holly said he cried. probably he was so relieved. Next. Okay, and this shows you that percentage of increase in students producing proficient essays. That's scores of 3.5 or above. It's pretty dramatic, actually. Next. This is actually the graph that you'd see on the first page of that newsletter I passed out, which is where that other one comes from. Notice the increasing scores at the proficient level, 3.5 and above, and the declining scores as the years go by on those scores that are not scored proficient. Some people ask about that dip in the middle. Our scores are pretty well trained to distinguish between a college-ready essay, that's a 4 or better, and one that is not college-ready. 3.5 means one scorer thought that student was ready for college, the other said, no, he or she's not. Next. This is what's happening now in developmental composition in the system. These are actual placements in the 2-year and 4-year units of our system. And these would be based on any test, not just the writing assessment. They are based on, could be Compass, ACT, SAT, so any measure, and you're seeing that. It's actually a dramatic decline in remediation in freshman comp. Next slide, please. And as we know, it's even though I've been yammering about this for 11 years, that idea of reducing remediation is really hitting the national spotlight now. And nationally, 34% of all entering students do require one remedial course. And beyond rhetoric report from SREB, this quotes from it that states are often stymied in their efforts to address the readiness gap by a set of intractable issues. And I think Montana's ahead of the curve on this, that we have actually cracked some of those issues. And the other alarming thing as we talk about remediation is only 17% of those high school graduates who have to take one remedial course actually end up earning a bachelor's degree. And it's exceedingly important that the assessments directly measure student performance on readiness standards, which is something we believe the MUSWA does. Next. I wasn't going to show this slide, but Commissioner Stearns was fascinated by a lot of this data that is a little more in-depth than what I generally showed Regents. Even though the average this year in our writing assessment scores increased, we also split out some of the qualities of writing, focus, organization, development, fluency, and conventions. And something really dramatic happened in 2011. Our scores marked significantly higher weaknesses in fluency and conventions. The fluency is sentence structure and word choice. Next. And so we're wondering what's happening. One of the things that we do with our online and word processed essays is students can use the tools available to them in word processing program, and therefore they can use spell check. And if they can't spell, they can't use spell check very well. So we had a hoot this year because we had so many of these really funny things that students wrote. I call it spell check gone mad. And so we have students who someday their classmates want to become the valedictorians of their class. And then another student who wants to learn to write well because it will improve my self-esteem. And then we have a prompt about drugs. Did you know that some kids are using arousal cans? We're also concerned about what's happening with vocabulary development. If you see a dip in the level of fluency, part of that is students are not using more sophisticated vocabulary. And I think the way to get to move to better vocabulary in students is really for students to read more, read complex text, read a lot. And then we are wondering if texting is doing something not only about word choice but sentence structure. You know, I for the first time started texting this year, and I'll tell you what, if I can write a short sentence rather than a long one, I go for the short one. And if I can write a short word instead of a long word, that's what I do. And so I wonder, this class of students, is this a class of students that's been texting ever since they started high school? Next. We also collect information about what students want to do after they leave high school. And this class of juniors, 51% want to go to a Montana University college or university, and 33% want to go out of state. And then we have those other things they want to do. Next. The students who want to go to college in Montana, 69% want to go to a public four-year, and the next biggest group is those who want to attend a COT, 16%. Next. One of the things that there was a letter to the editor, excuse me, in the Great Falls Tribune a couple weeks ago, a girl wrote in, why do we have to take tests? Why can't you just look at our grades to get into college? The fact is, a test is in a lot of ways less biased than grades. When we score these essays blind, the scorers don't know whether or not the student, they don't know what race they are, they don't know what gender, etc. And any preconceptions teachers have are not going to be there in that essay. I oftentimes have teachers call me afterwards and say, I didn't know Johnny could write that well. And here, to an anonymous audience, he's produced a very good piece of writing. This is particularly important to me. Because two really important things happened to me, life-changing things, when I was in high school. One of the things that happened is I took the PSAT and became a National Merit Scholar. The other thing is I had a baby. And I was not allowed to go to any extracurricular activities. My picture was not in the yearbook. I was banned from everything. And they were not going to let me walk across the stage and get my diploma until my father went into the principal's office and slammed his fist on that desk and said, my daughter, more than anyone else, deserves to walk across that stage. So they took everything away from me except my PSAT scores. And so I attended the Montana University system without ever paying a dime in tuition. Next slide. Okay, and talking about that, we also have great progress here in our American Indian students in this state. Poplar High School won awards for merit among the top quartile of the schools in Montana. Because of the honor those students got from the Montana University System Writing Assessment, the students at Poplar High School honored me with this beautiful star quilt that they made. 12 high schools on reservations participated. 5 of them earned average scores of 3.9 or higher. By 2011, 31% of those students who self-identify as American Indian had scores of 4, that's solid proficiency, or better, compared to 6.2 in 2001. And we had 9 American Indian students who received letters of recognition. And I want to say that Commissioner Stearns hand signs every one of those letters of those students who get 6s. And I thank you for all these years, appreciate it very much. Next. This year, we moved to start talking about the college and career readiness standards. We changed our language in the prompts and in our scoring discussions because the Common Core standards use, for example, the term claim instead of position, and they use the term sufficient Does the amount of evidence students give to support a claim, is that sufficient? Also, Common Core standards stress technology, and we really do use technology to the fullest. Next. I split out the high schools. Of course, there are few high schools that don't participate, but those who do participate have lower remediation rates than those who don't. That's the light blue. Next. Schools are rewarded in their participation by these awards of merit, letters of recognition for students who score 5.5 or 6. Every parent gets a memo, individual memo explaining their student's score, and they get transcript labels, etc. This year we started something new, that is online website for score retrieval. So we didn't have to do any mailing. And schools could go online and get their all these different graphs and charts and so on. And a lot of high schools, this is their dependable longitudinal data. Next. And those who participate find a lot of value in participating in our workshops. We have 370 people every year that give us 2 days. If you want to talk about personnel, that's 2.7 FTE that we get. 40 to 50 trainers give us 2 days to prepare. And I think it's important to note, this is a quote from one of our evaluations. MUSWA is by far the single most effective program I've ever used. People don't think about it in terms of a test. Think about it in terms of a program. And we do give them something new every year, so they keep coming back. Next. And these are the accomplishments that we think we have made over these years, defining college readiness in writing and giving us something to celebrate. Next. And what we are planning to do is find a new home on the campus of the Helena, where the collaboration among 2-year and 4-year campuses and school districts will continue, and we will really be fulfilling the College Now strategy of supporting student transitions from high school to college. So it's been a pleasure working at the Office of Commissioner of Higher Ed all these years.
Thank you very much, Jan, for your good and long work. Mr. Chairman, under campus issues and reports, as always, there's a rich vein of information from each of the campuses. I did get a request from Chancellor Grosef to make an introduction during this moment. And then we'll transition to you, Superintendent Juneau, and then my commissioner's section will be completed.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Stearns, Chairman Christian talked about the 8,000 graduates that we had this year, and if my father-in-law were here, he would remind me that there's 8,000 more people after my job. And I hesitate to single out a single student, but I do want to introduce you to Cindy Cannon, because she represents a couple of the issues on which this board and our system have labored mightily over the past decade or so. Following a career in the military, Cindy moved to Kalispell, and through the assistance of Chapter 35 benefits, she was able to take some 20-year-old credits from UCLA, move them here to Flathead Valley Community College, and after some time here, then transferred to Montana State University Billings. She graduated a couple of weeks ago in the College of Business, and she was awarded the College of Business Outstanding Graduate Award, the Dean's Special Award, the Montana Dakota Utilities Business Applications Competition Grand Prize, and was a finalist for the ASMSUB Golden Merit Award. And the reason, another reason that she is so special was because her first day on our campus was when she came to collect those awards and to go through commencement. She has done her work at MSU Billings entirely online, and so the issues of transferability and accessibility have worked very well for Cindy, and our faculty have designed coursework in a way that would let a completely online student win these recognition awards. And so I wanted to bring her to your attention and to congratulate both Cindy and the board and the system for the work that has been done over a long period of time. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Board of Regents, and see all of you face to face again. And I know you're being streamed live all across the state, so I'll try to behave. I do want to just quickly give a thank you to Dean Schaefer. I was the graduation speaker, the commencement speaker at the MSU College of Technology, Great Falls, for their largest class ever, and the growth that they've seen is pretty phenomenal. And so thank you for that. That was a lot of fun. It's going to be hard to compete with Commissioner Stern's breaking news. However, I just do want to thank her for being such a great partner over the last 2 years while I've been state superintendent. I think the last 2 years has seen really an unprecedented collaboration between our two systems of post-secondary education and K-12. And Commissioner Stearns has a lot to do with that. We bring our top policy teams together at the state level and discuss issues of remediation and Common Core and all those bridge and transition issues that we all talk about. And of course, special thanks for your support during the legislative session, because I do think united advocacy helps all of us on a K-16 basis in our public education system. And I do want to also give a special thanks to the student lobbyists who were at the session. They were great advocates for the Montana University system, two-year colleges, everything along the spectrum. And they were even better advocates than Chairman Christian when they stood up in front of committees. And people listened to them, and so I thank them for their advocacy work during the session. I don't envy your job, Board of Regents, of having to do the search over the next year to fill Sheila Stern's heels. It's going to be very difficult to replace, and I will miss her in her role, although I do look forward and happily accept her offer to join the Team Juno campaign and help with the campaign, because I'm always looking for volunteer drivers and people to play the piano at campaign events. I guess, you know, we have been receiving a lot of calls about the change from MUSWA because it connects with schools. I think a lot of people think sometimes it's connected with our office. So we do have a response that we do send out to the people across the state as they stream in, and I just want to pass that out. I don't think there's enough copies, but it basically, we had a budget proposal during the session to fund the ACT plus writing for every junior in the state, which is part of the Graduation Matters Montana initiative that we have at the Office of Public Instruction. And it's not just graduating students from high school, so they have a high school diploma and can be economically and socially successful, but also that they graduate college and career ready. And that, I just believe that the ACT plus writing, funding it for every junior in the state, would go a long way towards meeting that goals for many reasons. It would also provide us a summative assessment of high school and really dig into the data to see how our students are performing at the high school level. The letter, what the response basically lines out is that there is a need to work towards comprehensive K-16 writing assessment. We know that we need to improve our the writing skills of our students everywhere from first grade and kindergarten through 12th grade, so that they can transition more seamlessly into higher education should they choose to do that. The adoption of the National Common Core Standards by the Board of Public Education last week, I think, will help lead us down that road a bit. And so what the response does is just line out kind of all the efforts that are going on in writing across the state, a lot of different programs. MUSWA is certainly a piece of that. And so we'll continue to try to align all of those so that we have a more comprehensive writing system in this state. In other news, this is a second letter that I wrote to Governor Schweitzer. Basically, Governor Schweitzer and I and the chairperson Patty Myers of the Board of Public Education joined the Common Core Standards Initiative back in 2009. And we've been involved with all the drafts as they've come along the way, and those recently became final. We brought together Montana educators that span both K-12 and post-secondary education to take a look at those standards, found a pretty close match to what the board currently has. Big shift, however, because our current standards basically have benchmarks at 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. Common Core standards line out grade by grade, K through 12. And so it really allows for a very clear path for parents and students and teachers and everybody to follow wherever they may go, grade to grade, state to state, district to district. So very powerful. I think last Friday, the Board of Public Education accepted my recommendation and adopted the Common Core standards. Those are in English language arts and mathematics. And so we became the 44th state to adopt Common Core standards. And I think that'll go a long way with our connection with post-secondary education, particularly around those gateway courses of Comp 101 and college algebra. I think we can really delve into that and start talking the same language and get some ideas going about how we can make those transitions a little easier. Finally, you may have read that I did write a letter to Secretary Arne Duncan about not raising what we call annual measurable objectives under No Child Left Behind, adequate early progress. Every year, students take tests in this state, 3rd through 8th grade and 10th grade. And under No Child Left Behind, we are required as a state to score those, to publicize the results of that test. And through No Child Left Behind, by 2014, 100% of students are supposed to be proficient in reading and math. And we know, everybody knows, that that is just an unattainable goal. There's been a lot of discussion about reauthorizing ESEA or No Child Left Behind, and that hasn't happened for about 4 or 5 years now, and we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for Congress to act on reauthorization of that law, and it has not happened. The current administration is having us follow both No Child Left Behind, and because they have money and grants and federal money coming into our state, they also have new priorities, which I actually happen to agree with many of the goals. How the implementation works is a little different, but so we have been following at the state level and school districts 2 divergent paths. One, the current law of No Child Left Behind, which even Secretary Duncan says he doesn't agree with, and the new priorities and implementation of President Obama's administration and his education plan. Because of that, data collection has increased, our work has increased, and as you all know, we are a frontier state. It's very difficult to get a lot of manpower on the ground to continue doing that work. We had to, as a result of not this last session, which I'm trying to forget, but the session before, data collection, the state fiscal stabilization funds, and higher ed, of course, was a recipient of those funds as well. K-12 was required to do a lot of data collection as a result of those federal funds coming in to the state, which is unrelated to No Child Left Behind. Part of that, and I'll just tell you one example of data collection, part of that was we had to survey every school in the state to find out their evaluation systems of teachers and principals. At that time, the department, the U.S. Department of Education told us we had to publicly report on those school districts that have a performance level of evaluation, which is not many in this state. And so we did that. We surveyed every school. We found out which schools have a performance level in their evaluation system, and we will follow up with them. We are following up with them this spring. Last month, the U.S. Department of Education told us that we had to resurvey every school and find out more information about their evaluation systems. And so I wrote a letter to Secretary Duncan and told him that I will uphold my promise to schools of not having to redo those surveys. And so we will follow up with those schools that have performance levels, but we will not be resurveying the rest of the schools per my promise to them last time. So I guess AMOs are the bar that students need to hit. And we can look at the test performance in this state, and we know that proficiency has seen growth. Since 2003, our proficiency rates in reading on the state test have increased by 22 percentage points. In math, our proficiency rates have increased by 10 percentage points. Every year, or every other year, or every 2 to 3 years, we are required to raise what we call annual measurable objectives, which is basically the bar that schools have to jump over, or students have to jump over on their proficiency rates. Because we are going down two divergent paths, because we are waiting for Congress to reauthorize ESCA, Secretary Duncan has approved over 300 waivers on different areas of No Child Left Behind, giving alleviation to states in several other areas except this one, because he is out across the country promoting the idea that we need to reauthorize ESCA, which everybody agrees with, but I see it sort of as holding states hostage to this increase in AMOs, and so we are not, I don't want to play that game of having to prove his theory correct, in that we'll have a lot of schools failing, in his words. And so we're going to hold steady on the bar this year, and that's it. I mean, that's basically all the letter says. Students have already taken the test. We will still score those tests. We will still publicly report those tests. We will just report those under the current AMOs. And so that's what the letter I passed out around. We don't have the money and resources to work with schools under this arbitrary bar. And there's been 4 requests from other states to do this sort of waiver. All of them have been denied. Kansas just recently was denied last week on this exact request. And so we did not request a waiver. I hear that Montana is the talk of the department right now, and I am expecting a strongly worded letter soon. I don't know
About
what,
your rebel yell, kind of?
I don't know what that content of that letter will say, but we'll work forward from that point. But I figure my job is to protect schools, still be accountable, and I see this as doing both of those. And so there's so much going on. There's a lot of issues, but I think really these are the areas where we connect as Common Core, MUSWA, the thanks in the legislature for the support that the commissioner offered, as well as the Board of Regents and the students and the Montana University system, and then this idea of where our accountability system will go in the future. So thank you, Commissioner, for your partnership and your great assistance over the last 2 years. I look forward for another year anyway. Thanks.
Well, I wanted to say thank you, tell you those cracks about me in the legislature, but I guess we'll just say we're glad you're here. I think what we'll do is, we're a little bit behind, but why don't we take a quick break, get back here as soon as we can, 10 minutes at the most, and we'll move into staff and comp. Our meeting with the Staff and Compensation Committee. We have one action item, which is the appointment of a new chancellor for Montana Tech, and I believe President Engstrom will speak to that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do request that you approve the appointment of Dr. Donald Blackketter as the new chancellor for Montana Tech. He was just an outstanding candidate and had tremendous support from the committee and the community, both on campus and off campus. As you know, if you've looked at his materials, he is the current dean of the College of Engineering at the University of Idaho. So we're delighted at the successful outcome, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the search committee, which I thought did just a fantastic job, very professionally run search, Doug Coe was the chair of that search and again did just a fantastic job. The interest and support on the part of the campus and the community of Butte was intense, and we very much appreciated the attendance at the various sessions and so on. So with your approval, we would have a new chancellor at Montana Tech.
Okay. So we are in committee. I guess committee members, is there any discussion on this item? Congratulations on this item. Any comment moving this forward from the campuses or students? Sure. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, then I think it would be the sense of the committee that we would move this item forward for approval tomorrow. We have in front of us a consent agenda, items A through I, which have been posted, and unless there is one that we'd like to pull out, but I guess before we do that, is there any items on here that any committee members would like to discuss? Okay, sense of the committee then that we would move these forward. All right, before we do that though, we would like to pull one item out, and that is for our very own Chancellor Gilmore at Montana Tech, the awarding of a Professor Emeritus, Chancellor Emeritus, and I believe Mr. Abbott is going to speak to that.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Commissioner Stearns, as you all know, this will be Frank Gilmore's last Board of Regents meeting with you all. His wife Ann traveled with him to celebrate this, and as such I would like to read into the record item number 151-1503-R0511, which is Chancellor Emeritus status for Dr. Frank Gilmore. That after 13 years of distinguished service to the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of Montana Tech and to higher education in the state of Montana, the Montana Board of Regents confers upon Montana Tech Chancellor Frank Gilmore the title of Chancellor Emeritus. Explanation. Frank Gilmore was born in Bailey, Mississippi. He grew up in Mississippi, then Columbus, Georgia for 2 years before moving to Birmingham, Alabama in the 8th grade, where he graduated from West End High School. From the age of 12, he worked and saved money for college. Frank was the first in his family to go to college, and he received his Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from VMI in 1957. Frank then attended MIT, where in 1961 he graduated with a PhD in organic chemistry. Dr. Gilmore worked at Allied Chemical Company for 6 months before being called to active duty for 2 years as a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army Artillery. For the last 14 months of his service, he was stationed at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, where he worked on anti-radiation drugs. Frank did a postdoctoral year at Florida State University with an emphasis on peptide synthesis. From 1964 to 1967, Frank was at the Midwest Research Institute in Kansas City, Missouri. His research included the study of insect pheromones. Just before leaving Kansas City, Frank completed his first semester of law school at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. In the fall of 1967, Frank began a 26-year career at the School of Pharmacy, Department of Medicinal Chemistry at the University of Mississippi in Oxford. Frank was chair of the department 2 times, from 1969 to 79, and then again from 1987 to 1993. Along with teaching hundreds of undergraduates, Frank directed postdoctoral associates as well as PhD and MS students. He was chosen Teacher of the Year by the students. The research part of his career gave him the chance to investigate some great ideas in organic and medicinal chemistry and in drug design. The concept of peptidomimetics, mimicking peptides with non-peptides, which is the way that opiates work in the brain, came from the work of graduate students and postdoctoral associates working under his direction. This is now a major method used in drug design. Today, this may not seem novel, but they did this prior to the discovery that opiates mimic peptides and prior to the advent of computer modeling. Indeed, the name peptidomimetics came from their work. His rich research career also resulted in discovery of the first optically active alpha-aminophosphonic acid, the first peptides containing aminophosphonic acids, and the first demonstration of antibacterial activity of aminophosphonic acid containing peptides. Frank was Vice President of Academic Affairs, then the Executive Vice President of West Virginia Institute of Technology, now West Virginia University Tech, from 1993 to 1998. During his tenure at the campus, there were major budget and institutional hurdles that he helped resolve. During the summer of 1994, Frank completed the Harvard University's Institute for Educational Management. Frank became the 10th Chief Executive Officer of the Montana Tech campus in July 1998. One of the first issues that he had to deal with was a sizable budget cut. His prudent fiscal management practices enabled the campus to remain fiscally viable throughout his 13-year tenure on campus. Frank was one of the first campus CEOs within the Montana University system to suggest to the Board of Regents that campuses should be allowed to create a reserve revolving account to allow flexibility in dealing with budgetary uncertainties. Chancellor Gilmore was instrumental in working to ensure growth in all areas of the campus during his tenure at Montana Tech. The physical footprint of the campus grew by 57 acres with the ARCO land donation, and 2 new buildings, Centennial Hall and the Natural Resources Building, were built on the Tech campus. While the funding for Centennial Hall was already in place when Frank arrived on campus, his persistence over the course of multiple legislative sessions resulted in the funding to construct the Natural Resources Building. In addition to the new building projects, remodeling, building improvement projects occurred or are currently occurring in the following campus buildings: Chemistry Biology Building, the Mining Geology Building, Health Sciences Building, 2 separate projects in the Hyper, our ELC building, and the Student Union. Frank also played a major role in securing the funding for the Montana Tech Arch, which welcomes everyone to the Montana Tech campus. The degree inventory of Montana Tech grew dramatically during the Gilmore years. A total of 36 new degree offerings, ranging from certificate through master's, were added, and 4,801 degrees were awarded to students during Chancellor Gilmore's time on the campus. Other areas saw strong growth during Frank's 13-year career. These areas and the corresponding percentage growth include overall student enrollment up by 28%, international enrollment up by 276%, graduate school enrollment up by 50%, foundation endowment up by 158%, contract and grants up by 90%, and financial aid up by 79%. Frank has always served his local communities, Habitat for Humanity, the American Heart Association, United Way, PTA, Chamber of Commerce, local repairman for a small church, and Oxford School System committees are a few of his contributions. Frank has worked with national and international professional associations such as Sigma Xi, the International Research Society, serving as president of Sigma Xi International in 2002-2003. Also, the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy and the Goldwater Scholarship Review Committee. After 13 years of distinguished service to the students, faculty, staff, and alumni of Montana Tech and to higher education in the state of Montana, the Montana Board of Regents confers upon Montana Tech Chancellor Frank Gilmore the title of Chancellor Emeritus. Thank you.
Frank and Ann, we greatly appreciate your service for all the years at Montana Tech and to the Montana University system. We have a gift for you and Ann that Sheila's presenting on behalf of the board and the system. We thank you very much for your service, and it is with great pleasure we will move the Professor Emeritus Award forward tomorrow. Thank you. Chancellor Emeritus.
Mr. Chairman.
President Engstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chancellor Gilmore, on behalf of all of your colleagues within the University of Montana, I too want to congratulate you at this time and thank you for the tremendous work that you have done these years as Chancellor at Montana Tech. You've been a great colleague and a tireless advocate for Montana Tech, and you've positioned the institution so very well for this next phase of its lifetime. So I invite all of you to come to the reception tonight. President Karras has graciously agreed to give us a few minutes to recognize you there as well. So I hope that you all come and say hi to Frank and congratulate him there. Thank you.
Regent McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chancellor Gilmore, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment on behalf of all of the folks in Southwest Montana, as an Anacondan, to express our deep appreciation for your advocacy for our students, and your advocacy for Montana Tech, your advocacy for all of Southwest Montana and the Montana University system, in addition to your clearly evident legacy that you leave in research and in public service. I think it is without a doubt that you also leave a very strong legacy in your support for high quality education for our students and for Montana Tech. And it is with a heavy heart that we say goodbye and we wish you well, you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent McLean. President Cruzado.
Yes. Mr. Chair, and also Chancellor Gilmore, I want to join my voice to the choir of celebratory notes and all the wonderful things that you have accomplished for Montana Tech and for the state of Montana. And on behalf of the faculty, students, staff, and alums of Montana State University, I'm also pleased to present to you a token of our appreciation and to let you know that the doors of our university are always open to you and to your family. Congratulations, and thanks for a job well done.
Thank you, Chancellor Gilmore. I think we're ready then to move on. The next item on the consent agenda is a labor agreement. It too has been posted in our agenda. Is there any comment to add to that item from the committee members? Faculty or students or staff? Is there any public comment on that item? Okay, then that too, I think the committee would suggest we move forward for approval. All right, that is the end of our consent agenda. The next item is an information item, which is the beginning of the compensation discussion, one that will certainly play out with our staff and the staffs of the campuses and the administration from the various institutions that we serve. But at this time, Kevin McCrae is going to sort of open up that discussion so we can get some board perspective on this item that they can work from and take forward from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Regents. I would like to just provide a little bit of backdrop and information for the committee and for Regents for you to be able to consider and request of us or express any questions and concerns to us about compensation as you analyze the issue of compensation for faculty and staff in the university system. As you know, the Board of Regents by the Constitution of the state of Montana and by the statutes of the state of Montana is the authority for fixing and setting the compensation for every employee in the Commissioner's office and on the campuses of the university system that you govern, except to the degree that over the years the board has delegated that authority in certain ways, either through policies that delegate process and review to the Commissioner, or in the collective bargaining process where the board is a party to a number of collective bargaining agreements with employees and employee representatives. And then the way that process works, as you know, is we bring back collective bargaining agreements to the board for approval and ratification. The backdrop in your discussion, I would suggest, is that somewhere around 11 o'clock tomorrow, the board will be engaging in action related to committee reports and discussion, and you will have by then digested a lot of information with regard to budgets and academics and student services and workforce development. And this conversation we're having right now is your time to at least think about as regents, as a governing board, your either objectives or interests with regard to the university system's ability to recruit and retain the faculty and staff who deliver the goods and services related to all those other areas. I won't spend much time here talking about everything that we already know. We've been through a legislative session, so you're aware of, and you have participated in and worked hard in trying to convey and share information related to certain things, like the fact that our faculty salaries, for example, rank last in the nation by most relevant measures and standards. And we know that this bottom rank is more than just a statistic, but because every time we seek to, or the vast majority of time, that campuses seek to hire and retain a faculty member, that is a national competition. And wise people tell us that with regard to the economy, Montana is traditionally a little bit late to get into a recession and a little bit late to get out of a recession. If that is true and things start to, if there's a bit of an upturn in other states, then we will be more severely challenged than we are right now in regard to our campus's ability to recruit and retain faculty when other states become better equipped to bid on faculty in that national competition. With regard to support staff, the folks who deliver all of the services to students and our customers outside of direct instruction, we occasionally hear in various forums from Montana business leaders that Montana businesses are having a difficult time when they try to hire employees, that in many cases they have a difficult time competing with the wages offered by the Montana university system. And I never try to challenge those anecdotes because I believe those anecdotes. But I also know that we as a system, with regard to our support staff, clerical and administrative support staff, accounting technicians, food service workers, and so forth, our entry wage in the Montana university system is in the bottom quartile compared to the average Montana wage for the same respective job, according to the statistics from the Department of Labor. So the challenges with recruiting and retaining faculty and staff have not gone away. And we find ourselves then at this time, coming out of a legislative session, as you as a board try to assess our resources and our revenue in relation to our expenditures and our investments. We could use feedback from the board with regard to what your general objectives and desires are with regard to compensation in the university system for the next 2 years. We are in collective bargaining with 25 different unions, 25 different labor agreements. All of those labor agreements expire June 30th, and we're in the process of renegotiating them now. When we bring back collective bargaining agreements for the board's approval, we want to bring back contracts that will be approved. So that's why it's very important for us to now ask for us to begin to either think about or at this time share perspectives, questions, or concerns about what would be the successful philosophy to proceed with either in collective bargaining or costing of compensation in the view of the regents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Associate Commissioner Cray. I think what we'll do, it sort of spelled out different on the agenda, but I think what we'll do is go ahead and take some comment from the system, or and then we'll get some public comment, and then we can have a board discussion. I think we might as well hear that first, and then we can try to give some feedback. So is there any comments from within the MUS campus administrators? Or President Cruzado.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, this is one of the most important moments and one of the most important decisions that you will have in front of you for the stability and prosperity of our university system. Quite honestly, it's getting to be very, very difficult to attract the quality of faculty members that our students need and deserve to have in the classroom, in the lab, in the fields. It's also extensive to our researchers. Last summer, I devoted some time going around the state, attending field days in our ACT centers, and one of the concerns that the advisory board members brought to my attention is the fact that we have been unable to fill some of those positions, even in the ACT centers, simply because of the salary levels. So this is something that has then another type of impact, because without the service that occurs in our ACT stations, in our extension offices, then that also magnifies the lack of service for the entire state. This is also true about the faculty and staff that we currently have in our ranks. We talk about the difficulty of hiring in a national market, but another interesting situation that occurs is that with a lot of sacrifice, we cannibalize resources in order to attract an assistant faculty member at a competitive salary. And what happens is 2 years, 3 years down the road, when that faculty member is very competitive, it's attracting external funds from agencies. Guess what? They are so good that then other institutions come and raid the ranks of Montana State University, and I'm sure that the same is true at University of Montana. So we need your help. We need your help in order to tackle this issue with the diligence that we need, but also with a profound sense of fairness. Montana is very well known because we have, and I am absolutely convinced that we have very hardworking people here. I don't know if I ever mentioned to you when I announced that I was coming to Montana, that was a comment that I received time and time again. You will love working there because of the work ethics of Montanans, which is extensive to people who embrace the opportunity to work in our university system, in the faculty ranks, but also in the staff ranks. So we need your help in doing what is right and fair to the workers of the Montana University system.
Thank you, President Cruzado. President Engstrom.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the board, this is not a hypothetical issue. In the last week, we have lost an outstanding young faculty member to another institution. I won't give you the name because it isn't out there in the public yet, but this is a case where this young faculty member was a very promising rising star in an area that is of great emphasis on the University of Montana campus. The faculty member was wooed away to the University of Minnesota with a higher salary that we simply could not match, even though we made a counter offer. quality of life and the great colleagues at the University of Montana and all of the other institutions in the state go a long, long way to attracting good faculty and retaining good faculty. But it doesn't go all the way. If we don't continue to remain competitive, not just with faculty, but staff and administration. You just saw that we hired an outstanding dean for Montana, an outstanding chancellor at Montana Tech. But we had to compete to get that person from a salary point of view. We need to do that with every category of employee within our university system. This isn't just about being fair and compensating hard work. That's an important part of it. This is about keeping the state of Montana competitive down the road. We talk about having low incomes in Montana. We will never break that cycle if we don't make the important investments up front in education and in the people who deliver education. I agree with President Cruzado. This is the most important thing that we are about now. I know these are challenging times for the state of Montana and the country, but if we don't take the opportunity and the responsibility to invest in our higher education system by keeping and attracting the right people, Montana will forever be at the low end of the economic spectrum, and we just can't allow that. Thank you.
Thank you, President Engstrom. Other, Dean Schaefer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'll be brief. I concur with both President Engstrom's and President Cruzado's comments. The one other piece I would like to add, while recruitment and retention are clearly a challenge that we all face, especially in competitive fields, the other point that I'd like to make is right now, our faculty and staff are challenged with incredible strains in their homes and in their jobs. If we don't address things like the increasing costs of healthcare and premiums and those types of things, we will damage morale on our campuses, which is another dimension of why this is so important for us to do something for those faculty and for those staffs at this point. So recruitment, retention, and morale for those people that are serving our students and our constituent groups every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Schaefer. Any other comments from around the system? Chancellor Story.
Well, I'm going to be the echo. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, members of the board. We've encountered similar problems on our campus. In fact, we just have a very important member of our senior staff who's accepted a position elsewhere at about twice the salary we pay her. There was no way we can compete. We have not been able to hire a professor in the business department. We just have not been able to do it. We have classes scheduled next fall with no one to teach accounting. Well, that's not true. We have one person. We need two. And the campus morale, as Joe said, is absolutely impacted by this.
Chancellor Gilmore.
Mr. Chairman, to illustrate the very, very great difficulty of salaries in Montana, had I remained in the lowest income state in the nation, my home state of Mississippi, and had I remained chair of the Department of Medicinal Chemistry, I would make essentially the salary I have made as chancellor.
Chancellor Gilmore. Other comments? Neil, go ahead.
Chair and the board, I would be remiss from the faculty perspective not to comment. Also, I'll let my colleagues in the cuffs perhaps talk about some of the more fairness issues, but I want to mirror President Engstrom's comments about losing faculty. This morning we heard from the Dean of the Journalism School talk about a program of distinction at University of Montana, and our ability to be able to have those kinds of programs is to retain excellent faculty. Students come to programs like that because of the excellence of those programs, and so from a faculty senate perspective, we really are interested in maintaining the quality of programs, and the way to do that obviously is to have high quality faculty. And so anything that the board can do to help us attract and retain high quality faculty, I think is not only in the short term but in the long term very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Moisey. Why don't you come up here and read your name in for the record, please? I think we could probably get it spelt if you just want to say it.
Okay, yeah. Blake Bjornson, and MSU Bozeman, student body president. On behalf of MAS, faculty and staff is critical to our education. So much interaction between the two groups, between the students and the faculty and staff. A good faculty member can make a boring topic incredibly interesting, but they can make a really intriguing topic really terrible if it's not good faculty. Good faculty is incredibly important. And a good interaction at the financial aid office or at the library is critical as well. So on behalf of students, this is a very critical issue. We want good faculty and staff, and the way to do that is by paying them well and showing them that we care. So,
thank you. Other comments from within our system? Marvin.
You're hearing a theme, so I'll just continue on the theme. But yeah, Marvin Landsverk, I'm Faculty Senate Chair, Montana State University. And I know when we think about this issue, sometimes it gets personalized into how much money do we need in our pocket to stay here or not to fly someplace else. But I think I speak for a lot of faculty too that I mean, that's often not the first thing we think about this. When we're looking into the future of what we do in our jobs and commitments to students and our disciplines and trying to make advances in that discipline, and you want to be someplace where there is a future in that discipline so that the gifts you have actually make a contribution. And I think, I've been here over 20 years now, and I think that's what people are gloomiest about right now, is looking at their own department, their discipline, the funding, not just for themselves, but for what they're able to do to make big things happen in the world, which we're trying to send students out to do. And if you get to a certain level of losing hope that there will be funding to maintain those things, that's when individual faculty start to look for places where there are those programs. And I mean, in my own department and other places, I just see that. And coming from the field of English, I'm always interested in the language and terms we used to think about these things. When we were talking about last year, the stimulus funds coming in, we know we had budgeted for them, and then knowing that those would go away and referring to that as falling off of a cliff when those money is left. I mean, I think those are the kinds of metaphors I think we really need to think about right now. I mean, we're at cliff's edge in a number of programs, moving from sort of having sustainable, full-fledged programs that we can deliver. I mean, in the short term, to see those go away, and that's the things that keep me up at night. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Chancellor Grossa.
Mr. Chairman, the students that we are so proud to graduate and introduce are products of a lot of moving parts in a university, and it is all of those moving parts that need to be recognized and compensated fairly. The people who recruit our students, who keep our buildings and grounds, who teach our students, who provide services. Our students, our graduates are the products of all those people, and all need to be considered and compensated well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Grossa. Other comments? Is there public comment on this item? Mr. Farrell.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, my name is Marco Farrow. I'm with MEMFT. We represent the faculty on all of the campuses. First of all, I want to thank everybody that spoke ahead of me. It really is enlightening. It's pretty amazing to see that everybody's on the same page here. And this is the kind of things we hear from our members. We have talked to you about it in the past. And we had a plan going into this legislature to advocate. I hold in my hand Kevin's talking points from the legislature about faculty salaries. So we marched through there in a kind of a unified manner, and I want to thank the members of the board and the commissioner and her staff and the student lobbyists and everybody that went there to fight the good fight. So now you have a challenge in front of you, and as you know, budgets represent the priorities that you set. And I think you've heard the leadership of your campuses talk about the level of priority in which faculty and staff represent to them. You've heard from students, and you've heard from faculty members. So I don't envy your job here, but I think it's very important. I think you're seeing the signs of these inversion compression issues. We've talked about them in the past. We know what they're doing to morale. They're happening within the faculty ranks. They're happening in the administrative ranks. It's pervasive across the system. I think it's happening at the staff level as well. The cost of these failed searches, I know I've talked to some chancellors and presidents about this. The cost of the failed searches themselves is astronomical. I think if we, and I'm sure we do track those at least at the campus level, I think at some point we have to look at that in comparison to the salaries that we're offering and see if we need to make a different investment. You know, I think it was Chancellor Story and I had this discussion about a year ago about other states pulling out of the recession ahead of us and picking off faculty. And this was at the Helena, one of the Helena COT meetings. And you're seeing that happening. It's happening. It's going to happen more until we make a change. So I want you to know that MEMFT will be behind the decisions that you make. We certainly want to work in partnership. Our bargaining units will work in partnership, and we'll come to the table in good faith to do what's right for the institutions and for the system and for the people that work there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Marco.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Krico. I'm the Assistant Director of Montana Public Employees Association. MPA represents approximately 1,700 of your employees at 7 campuses of the university system. And I want to say how encouraging it was to hear again the support, the comments for staff and faculty. We often get into kind of the old assumption that we're on opposite sides of the table, especially when we're in the midst of collective bargaining. So it's always very, very encouraging to hear that we have kind of mutual goals and concerns. As you've already heard, and I just want to reiterate, I recognize, MPA recognizes, your staff recognize that you face some difficult challenges and decisions. We simply, on behalf of those 1,800, 1,700 members, respectfully ask that you keep these individual staff and faculty in the forefront of your deliberations. These are the individuals who not only serve your campuses, but really do make a difference in the lives and successes of the students. So I want to just thank you for this opportunity. I do have to kind of give a personal aside that is a bit unrelated, but I had the good fortune at the end of my long career with the university system to work directly for Commissioner Stearns, and it was a wonderful, rewarding opportunity, so I want to thank you for that, Commissioner Stearns. I also want to thank Kevin for framing this discussion. He is a very well-respected and admired colleague, even though we do literally sit on opposite sides of the table, but I thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board, for your willingness to look at this difficult issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Other public comment?
Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jennifer Gursky. I'm currently the president-elect for MAS, which is the Montana Associated Students. We were planning to have this conversation a little later, but we'd like to make sure that the conversation is relevant on behalf of students. We realize that the cost of education is a very integral part of the discussion that's going to ensue today and tomorrow. And as students, we're aware that there are some sacrifices that have to be made. As this conversation continues, I hope that the board keeps very close to the heart that the objective and the sacrifices cannot be disaligned, that if there are sacrifices to be made on some of the paying members of the constituency represented today, that the complete objectives are met for quality educational units, quality staff, and quality professors. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay. Then I think we'll turn to some board discussion. I think Kevin has framed this very well. We're not here to try to bargain contracts or set out specifics, but I think we really need to try to give some feedback as to what the board direction is. And obviously this conversation continues in tomorrow as we try to find funding for some of the directions that we give. Never an easy task. But we could take some comments. I guess I would just start by saying, you know, I don't think we're on the opposite side of the table when it comes to this. We very much value, I appreciate the comments that are made. We very much value the faculty and staff that serves the students of Montana. And of all the efficiency measures that I'm proud of, the fact that we're lowest in the nation on compensation is not one of them. I think that is a tough place to place some of the, I mean, Montana has a history of placing some of the burden there, but I don't think we can place it all there. And I think we've done a lot. I certainly, my family will enter the families in Montana that have 2 kids in college next year paying tuition, and I'm certainly very attuned to that. But at the same time, we need to empower our presidents and chancellors and deans to be able to make decisions that maintain quality in Montana. And I'm certainly going to support our efforts to do that. I think we've had a lot of discussions about how we do that. I personally favor that sort of campus president's empowerment message that we send. It's going to be up to them and their administrators to solve some of these problems. But I think we just simply must continue to address and frankly must do better than the cards we've been dealt by our current funding stream to address the needs of our faculty and staff. And we have to maintain quality, and we have to empower the presidents to be able to deal with the recruitment and retention issues that they're clearly facing. With that, other public or other committee comments? Or I think we can treat this as a committee as the whole as we move forward. If there's any board members that wish to comment, feel free. Regent Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's really a lot of things I'd like to say on this, but you know, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and we're right at the break of noon, and I don't want to get into the middle of my 30-minute speech and have you take a break. So I'll just say for the short version now that I echo all the comments that have been made, and frankly, the legislature turned its back on the employees of this state, and I don't think we should do the same. And I'll have softer things to say later.
Thank you, Chair. Regent Barrett. Regent Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will try and keep this brief also. I think it's important to remember that a little over a year ago, we convened a committee to make a report to the board about compensation issues, and we endorsed that report. And in my mind, that's a handshake agreement with the people that work for us. And I agree with Chairman Barrett that the legislature wasn't able to do what we needed to have done, and that's why we have the independence from an electoral process that we have, because we have a responsibility to make very tough decisions. This may be one of them. But we have a lot of people who depend on us, and a lot of people who do very good work for the system.
Thank you, Regent Hamilton. I agree. Regent Bornpole.
From a student's perspective, I completely understand what morale does in the classroom and to your services on campus. And from the board level, I see morale not only as that, but as a matter of effectiveness and efficiency. When we are able to let our employees know how much we appreciate their service to the system, I think that we get their maximum effort, and not that we're not now, but I think that it's just with an extra spark. It's an extra bit of customer service and an extra bit of excitement in the classroom. And it's something that I certainly look forward to discussing. With a degree in economics, I understand that the market speaks. And watching Montana fall last in line for compensation, I think that it's a product of the resources that we've had or chose to contribute, but it's something that I'm simply not comfortable with.
Thank you, Regent Borenpaul. Regent Buchanan.
Thanks for the discussion and thanks for all the input on behalf of everybody. I think there's a major contextual element here that we're not paying attention to. I mean, I couldn't agree more that the way an institution creates excellence is by employing excellent people. But the part of this conversation that is completely absent right now is how. We're going to discuss that tomorrow, but at this table right now, this is absolutely out of context because ability and desire are two very different things. In preparation for this conversation, you know, a lot of conversations have been going on, and I, as I'm sure you all do in preparation, try to visit with those who are close to you, where we live and where we work, and try to get a consensus or perspective as to directions and policy that we're going to take. And I feel that I could not share more the need, the opinion on need to do what we can to keep the best people within our system. But I'm very concerned about the approach that we're taking with how we get there. And that discussion, of course, is for tomorrow. But I would also say that between the last 2 or 3 meetings, I've made it a very deliberate point to spend a lot of time on campus with employees, at the invitation of many of them and on my own. And every single interaction, question I ask, what can I do? What can a regent do? I'll tell you, I don't hear these issues as loud as I hear them here. I hear and sense that morale is extremely high. I hear that the faculty members on these campuses enjoy the heck out of what they're doing, are inspired to do it very much by the role and scope of work that they're in, and would encourage my fellow board members to have that perspective, because in this room, a lot of the discussion is it's somewhat insulated, I think, from what's happening on the streets. And you know, I know that I'm not alone in the state and wondering how, and I know that I'm not alone at this table and wondering how we accomplish these things. We have to be extremely careful with that part of the conversation, and we haven't even started to talk about it yet. And so I by no sense, by no means or intent would like to say that we cannot, I agree completely with what's being said in this room. I feel like we have a board have talked about approaches on the House side for a couple of years now in preparation for tomorrow's discussion, and started a little bit early today. And I think that some of my concerns relate more to that than the need. And I think it's extremely important for us. If this discussion is as an item that closes today, if Kevin's looking for looking for perspective, I think before you wrap up your opinion and your summary of this discussion, it'd be very inappropriate not to include the how part of it, because ability and desire are two very different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Buchanan. Regent Borenpaul.
This might get away slightly from the goal of this conversation to, propose how we'd like to move forward. But I would say, as a student in the classroom and a user of services and somebody who speaks with our employees, especially on MSU Bozeman's campus, I think that, as we discussed earlier today, we talked about the can-do attitude, specifically on the MSU side, but that certainly is throughout our system. And I think that we have employees that are incredibly dedicated. I can't even begin to state how much I've gained from this system as a student. And so it struck me when you said that morale is really high, because I do find otherwise. I mean, I've heard otherwise. I hear it in the classroom and personally meeting with people. I I think that while they're on campus, I think that there is this incredible can-do attitude. What can we do to make our students' experience amazing? But then you also hear undertones of you know, I've had professors that have sought positions elsewhere, not because they wanted to leave Montana, but they simply couldn't, you know, find a raise in their salary any other way. And that means uprooting their families and leaving this great place that we all call home. And so I do think that while on campus, incredible people, incredible attitudes, I think that there are underlying narratives that maybe aren't shared as readily.
Other comments? Thank you, Regent Bornpole. Regent Robinson.
Mr. Chair, I want to say, first of all, that I appreciate everybody's coming to the meeting today and speaking with us about your perspective of what's going on your campuses. That's so critical for us to make our decisions here. And like Regent Buchanan, myself, I've been trying to get out more to meet with campus administrators, faculty, and speak with them and students, and as well as, I guess ever since my picture was in the paper, all of the parents in Billings know that I'm on the Board of Regents. And so I hear a lot in our neighborhood from, you know, neighbors that have their children in college or they're going to be going to college here soon, and certainly have gotten a sense of what tolerance they have as well, you know, because as we'll be talking about tomorrow, there has to be a way to do this. I agree as well, and I've heard from, what I've seen out there is talking with the faculty is that they're doing amazing things with not enough. And I've seen that a lot here in Montana, and I know it personally as well, having left Montana, worked in some of the larger cities, and then moved back to Montana by choice, knowing full well that immediately in the next job that I got, it was 50% less than what I was making out there. But I also got to exist in this environment. I also got to live here in Montana. I got to be in relationships that I really feel like I'm in a community that makes a difference. And those are some of the benefits. And I agree that it doesn't take care of everything that we need compensation-wise. It certainly hasn't for me as well. But those are the things that we'll be weighing here today, because I do feel that directly that the faculty is undercompensated. I do agree with that. And I've seen those faculty out there that I've met with, they've actually shared the numbers with me of what it compares to on a national scale. We certainly can't compete on a national scale, and Montana certainly isn't a Los Angeles, and I'm glad that it isn't, because I would rather be here. With that said, though, I support what you all have spoken about, and I think that as the discussions continue here today and tomorrow, that I'll have more to add to that. But I think it's been very important to hear your voice, not only here today, but out there as well. And so we are listening, and we'll make our decisions accordingly. So thank you.
Thank you, Major. I guess I'd just add one follow-up. I certainly agree with the concern of the how. That's a huge problem for us, and sort of the crux of what we have to do. I think, though, from my perspective, is we just simply must find the how. I don't think I will be comfortable or feel like we did our job if we do as possibly our legislative counterparts did and throw up our hands and say it's just simply something we can't address. I think we have to find the how to do it, and I think that'll come from a number of areas, and I certainly agree with what you say, Regent Buchanan, and look forward to that conversation and us all working together to find the how. But I think we have to find the how to maintain quality and to maintain competitiveness, and to, if nothing else, treat the people that serve so hard in Montana fairly. Oh, you gotta have the mic, Regent McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just like to express my appreciation to each of the folks who came to the microphone, each of the folks from our respective campuses across the state, for the sentiment that you echoed in regards to faculty and staff across the Montana University system. And I also want to express my appreciation to Mr. McCray for his opening remarks and his posing of the question about what our objectives would be and our interests would be. And unequivocally, I think my objectives are recruitment and retention, and my interests are to impact student learning through recruitment and retention efforts. Let me say that I'm prepared to have the how discussion at this time. And I think that we all need to start talking about the how discussion now as we prepare for the next legislative session in the recruitment of candidates that will support funding in a meaningful way for all of education across Montana. I want to send a great big shout out to all of the folks on our campuses who do the good work day in and day out. And as Regent Robinson just suggested, they are doing more with less. And I am deeply appreciative for that. When I ask my students who have gone on to the Montana University system what they like, what they appreciate, what they enjoy most, it always comes back to a person. And so it's easy to make meaning of the value that these folks contribute to the Montana University system. We've all had conversations with faculty and staff, and I would agree with Regent Borenpole that there is a concern about morale across the Montana University system. For me, let me just say that it is all about impacting student learning, and I don't think that there is a single decision that we make at this table that is more important or more profound than how we impact student learning in the most significant way by hiring and retaining the most superb, remarkable folks in the classroom and in the offices who will keep our students there once they get there. I'm prepared to move forward with a conversation about making Montana more competitive and to send a message to all of our faculty, all of our staff, all of our administrators that we value you and the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent McLean. Well, Associate Commissioner, I hope we've left you with some direction. Obviously, there will be more conversation to follow. I agree, we've left you with direction, and we hadn't figured out how you get there yet, but we will have more conversation about this, and I appreciate the open, candid conversation we've had here today. We will move forward. I think we're just going to skip Budget Committee. Todd, I apologize.
Forget the how.
Yeah, it seems too difficult. We'd like to just take a moment before we break for lunch, and then we'll come back, and I think we'll try to get back as close to 1 as we can. I know it says 1:15, but we are running a little bit behind, and we'll start the Budget Committee. But before we do so, I'd like to thank Regent Borenpole for her incredible service this past year on the board, and of course, the governor of our great state tells us what happens next, and we'll wait to see that, but your first term or has officially ended with this meeting, so we thank you very much, and we have a certificate for you and a gift from us on behalf of the board and the behalf of the system. So we thank you for your service. President Engstrom.
Regent Borenpaul, on behalf of all of us at the University of Montana, we appreciate your work as well. We've really enjoyed having you with us this year, and we have a small gift to give you as well.
I wish I knew a name other than Chicky right now, but
that works. But Mr. Commissioner, members of the Regent members, I would also like, on behalf of the Montana Western students and the Montana Associated students, to thank Regent Borenpaul for her tireless work and her dedicated service. She has given us much direction and much discussion. We thank you for everything you've done in helping us throughout the year. So thank you very much.
President Cruzado.
Sure, Mr. Chair and members of the board, and we also want to say how proud we feel about the region that started with a different name, Teresa Snyder, and we saw that transformation, and we have seen the many wonderful contributions that this fantastic region has added to the board. So, on behalf of the faculty, the staff, the wonderful students, the alums from Montana State University, we also want to say thank you for all you've done for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. We're ready to recess for lunch then. Board members, we are where we had the executive session, I believe, right across the hallway here. Oh,
Correction.
President Karras.
Just to remind you all, we've changed the lunch to make it easier for all of you. There's a room in the building. If you go out this building and go diagonally to the building to your right, everybody else will be in the cafeteria, but if the regents and the students go straight through there, there's a room. Our boardroom is in that building. Some of you have been in that room before. And there's a lunch set up separately for the regents and the students in that room. So, just
thank
a clarification.
You very much. So we will reconvene this session shortly after 1.